Hey friends, it's Simon Hurley and welcome to another video. Now today we're bringing something a little bit weird. We are going to use plastic wrap to create a really beautiful texture on our card today. We're going to create a background with it and also do a really fun stamping technique using it. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Alright, so for this technique, I'm just going to use some plastic wrap from my kitchen. I think any plastic wrap will work for this. I just like that it is a non-porous surface, so it's not going to take in the ink, and it's going to do a really great job with the stamping technique because it crinkles up like that. So I'm going to go in with a piece of my plastic wrap and start with it kind of flatter like this, and use one of my Simon Hurley Create inks. Here I went with Clear Sky as kind of a lighter tone of ink. Then I'm going to take my plastic wrap and crinkle it up like this. So it's going to create lots of texture, lots of mountains and valley folds in there. Then I'll go in with a darker color, which here I'm using Midnight Snack, and that's going to apply to those top areas where it was crinkled. So you'll get a variation. I'll put it over a piece of white cardstock here so you can see. You can see the lighter and darker colors depending on where it crinkled up. Now I'm going to uncrinkle it there, and then I'm going to take my water sprayer and just spray some water down onto the surface there. Then I'll take this and flip it onto my cardstock here. I'm using some Simon Hurley Create Stark White cardstock. I find this is my favorite for doing ink blending, but also fun watercolor techniques like this because it takes the water really nicely. So I'm going to put this on my surface and then kind of crinkle it up in areas like that. And you'll see where it crinkles, it'll create kind of a different look. And when it dries, it's going to create a different effect. So I'll let it sit and dry just like that. And once that's all nice and dry, you can see that really fun background. Now I just created a little bit of texture in there. It wasn't too much, and that's because we added so much water. But here I'm going to go in with a second layer. So I'm going to crinkle up my plastic wrap a little bit like you see here. And again, go in with the darker color like Midnight Snack. And that'll apply down onto the surface with a little bit of texture because it was kind of crinkled up like that. So once I'm done with that, I'm going to add some water down, but I added a lot less water than I did at first. Then I'm going to take it and lay it down on my background, and before it really hits, I'm going to kind of crinkle it up and give it lots of texture. Then, without giving it much pressure, I'm going to lift it off of my surface without fully letting it dry. And I found this was my favorite way to do this technique. So kind of scrunch it up, lay it down, and then peel it off, and you get that cool kind of stamped result wherever that darker color was, and it gives tons and tons of texture. So try layering up backgrounds like this to create some really beautiful effects with that plastic wrap. Now I'm going to go in with the Simple Beauty stamp set from Altenew. I love this set and the beautiful flowers in this, but I'm really using it because it has lots of solid images that we can stamp down because that's what we want for adding texture. So I'm going to go in with the lined outline image first with some jet black archival ink. That's going to be nice and waterproof, and I'll stamp that down onto my cardstock. Now I'm going to go in with the different solid layers that fill in this image. Here I'm using some of my Simon Hurley Create inks, and because it's such a large area, I'm actually going to use several ink pads to ink up one flower. I find that by rolling on my ink pads and adding different colors, it gives some really great depth and dimension to the image. And it's not super necessary to have a great blend because we're going to kind of fix it with the texture that we add here. So I'm going to go in and crinkle up my plastic wrap again. I've decided to spray my ink like once, just a very minimal amount of spray, and then I'll stamp it down into all that texture. And this is almost like a stamp kissing technique, but with this plastic wrap, because it'll remove ink from the surface in only those areas where it touched. So that's why you want to crinkle it up really nice. And then when you stamp it down, you get all of that amazing texture of the plastic wrap. I'll do the same thing with my other flowers here. I'm going to add a little bit of yellow and different shades of yellows and oranges to really shade this flower in. Then, like I said, crinkle up your plastic wrap. So I like to just crinkle up a little area, and I find that the smaller, more tight crinkles are the best because it'll give some really good texture in there. Once I've stamped that down, it'll lift off some ink, and then I can stamp it down onto my image. And I'm not sure if you can really see here, but I'll pull it close in just a second. You get such stunning texture from doing this. Now I wanted to save a little bit of time here, and there's several groupings of leaves. So I add them down onto the image how they're going to stamp. I grabbed my largest Simon Hurley Create acrylic block and picked them up together. So that way I'm able to ink two groupings of leaves at once, which really saves me a lot of time. I'll add my lighter color of green down. Here I used some Psych, and then I used Tropical Tango and just rolled it onto the edge. And that's just going to create a little bit of depth and dimension. I love doing that when there's large solid images like this. I'll spray it once or twice to get just a little bit of movement going there. Then I'm going to crinkle up a larger area here, and then we will stamp it down into the plastic wrap. And like I said, you want smaller crinkles because then it'll remove ink just in those areas, whereas if you have too much of a flat surface, it'll remove a lot of ink off your stamp. So you want to crinkle it up really nicely so it gets tons of texture in there. Then I'll stamp that down, and I'll do the exact same thing with the other grouping of leaves, ink it up, stamp it down, and you get that really great texture. So I'll cut that out, and there is all of that amazing texture and dimension that you get from stamping it with the cling wrap. I love this technique. It's like a version of stamp kissing. You could do it with a lot of different textures, but this is so fun. Alright, so to finish off this card, I'm going to take another piece of struck white cardstock and die cut a heart out of it. I love using hearts as kind of windows for my card. They just create a little bit of extra interest. So then I'm going to take that background that I had created earlier, add a little bit of adhesive on the back, and I'm holding this next to that heart window. So I'm holding it exactly how I want it to look when I adhere it down, and then I'll adhere it down onto my card base. Now that window was not adhered, so that's just going to make sure that everything is lined up, and then I'll adhere the window down on some foam tape for some extra dimension. Now I'm going to adhere that cluster of flowers down, and I like to make things kind of follow the outside edge of that heart. Even though it covers up, it creates a really awesome look. So I'll add that flower cluster down, and then I'm going to do a sentiment. I always like to move the clear sheet of stamps around until I find which sentiment is going to work best, and the sentiment wishing you sunshine and love fit perfectly in that area. And this is a fun Gina K Designs and Thermoweb stamp set. So I'm going to ink that up with some clear embossing ink, and then I'll stamp that down onto some vellum. I didn't want to cover up too much of that background, and this is a really great way to still make your sentiment kind of see-through, but stand out on the card. So I'll white heat emboss that, and then I'm going to fussy cut this out. I like to go pretty close to that edge because, like I said, I want things to not be covered up too much, and I like to use these Fiskars Spring Assist scissors. They really are helpful with fussy cutting. I'll then adhere that down on the card, and I love that it stands out but doesn't cover anything up. So there we have that really fun cling wrap technique. I love how that background turned out with all of that amazing texture, and those solid flowers turned out beautifully as well. I want to give a huge shout out to the sponsor of today's video, and that is Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community for creatives like me and you, and people who just want to learn something new. They have a bunch of different topics for classes, including different art things like illustration, graphic design, and also arts and crafts, but they also have many other topics that can be really interesting. Now recently I've been taking an illustration class for Procreate on my iPad. I draw all of my stamps, and that is really helpful to learn a lot of information and see my growth during that class. Skillshare is less than $10 a month with an annual membership, and they're offering the first 1,000 of you guys to click the first link down below in my description box, and you'll get a free trial of Skillshare Premium membership. So I hope you guys will check that out. If you enjoyed today's video, give it a big thumbs up, and be sure to hit that subscribe button down below so you never miss another card making and crafting video like this one from me. Alright guys, I'll see you very soon. Have a great day. Bye!